Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a while since I've had the pleasure of playing in this beautiful hall. My name is Amy Niffen. I am the viola faculty for Anderson University, and I'm joined on stage by colleagues of mine from the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. You will recognize Stephen Hockey because he teaches and plays here all the time. And his lovely wife, Sophia Cho Hockey, is playing violin tonight, and we're joined by Jennifer Farquhar, who we were trying to remember what the program was that we played a number of years ago, but it was a program of Haydn around Easter. We did the last 7 words of Christ by Haydn. That's what it's called, right? 7 last words? Yes. So she is maybe not a familiar face, but she's been here before. Collectively, we are known as the Castleton Quartet, and tonight we have a program to play for you that is a sassy violist program, because that's my alter ego. I am the sassy violist, and as the sassy violist, I use live music and storytelling to harmonize elements of music, history, and social issues. And these programs are taken into schools in the Indianapolis area. It's one of the programs offered by the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra through the Community Engagement Department. And tonight, we are here to play a program called You Can't Play That Here, when music is banned. And we're about to play something that I would wager has never been played on this stage before, and extra points will be awarded to anyone who can name the band on the screen. So think about that. So you may wonder why we start a faculty recital with a song like Louie Louie. If you have a program, if you have access to it on your device, you'll see that it's written by Richard Berry, but actually it was made most famous by this band. Does anybody know who this is? Raise your hand, anybody? No, it's the Kingsmen, which there's no reason why you should know who they are, because I think they were a one-hit wonder. This was recorded for about $50 in somebody's garage. But it became a big hit. Tonight's program has to do with restrictions or bans on music and musicians, and why. If you lived in Indiana during the 60s, you might remember that Louie Louie was banned in this state for 2 years. And the reason why was because there was a question of whether or not the lyrics were appropriate for public consumption, which is actually really funny. If you go online and listen, they're pretty indistinct once you get past Louie Louie, oh baby, we gotta go. The rest of it is kind of hard to understand what they're saying, so what's it even matter? But it was banned in this state. So, let's see. Did you know that music has been banned, I'm sure you do, by governments in different countries many times over the past several centuries? Not just recently, it's not just a 20th century thing, it's been going on for a long time. There are a lot of things that are understandable to ban, like murder, theft, drugs, child labor. Everybody agrees those are bad for society. But music? Why would anybody ban music? So bans are interesting things. Here, let's see, interesting things. What used to be banned isn't banned anymore, and vice versa. And here we have a couple of examples. Drugs are bad, they're still banned, although the jury's out on a few of them. And interracial marriage used to be banned, but that was unjust, and so it's not banned anymore. That was overturned. What about bans that might not make any sense or seem to serve any purpose? Kind of funny, I think. Currently, there are some curious things in the world that are banned, like chewing gum in Singapore, and they're serious too. If you go to Singapore, do not chew gum. The fines are up to $100,000. Also, no carrying goldfish down the street in Rome in a bowl. It's not allowed. No high heels at historical sites in Greece. They've been there for thousands of years, but they don't want your high heels poking holes in the granite. And who here likes memes? Anybody like to share a good meme, right? Well, Australia is not the place for you. And lip syncing is strictly forbidden in Turkmenistan. So are opera and ballet, just unnecessary according to the government. So now we're getting closer to today's subject. There are bans that we agree with, like drugs and child labor, because they're obviously bad. There are others that we push against, like book bans and interracial marriage. There are times, however, when governments pass laws to ban music and strictly enforce them because they know that the power that music has to move the heart and soul of people. Not people as in one person at a time, although that is true, but people groups who can be unified, strengthened, inspired by a simple tune that can remind them of their heritage, their pride, who they are as people. Depending on the government, such a tune can be too powerful and too dangerous to be allowed. So, the first place that we're going to look at, governments are rightly afraid of the kind of courage that music can inspire. It's not a new thing either. Way back in 1746, the British government found it wise to ban the playing of the bagpipes. That's right, bagpipes. Beautiful Scotland, bagpipes. Really? Why bagpipes? Well, they really were considered, wait for it, an instrument of war. Yes, indeed. The Scottish clans were not happy about being ruled by England, and in 1746, the final battle for their freedom was fought at a place called Culloden. The Scots were banded together as a unified force, but still divided in their separate clans, and they were able to fight individually with their clans because they could each hear their own bagpiper playing their signature march through the clash of claymores and the firing of muskets. After the battle, the British Parliament, recognizing the power of clan unity, clan identity, passed a law banning the playing of bagpipes, the speaking of Gaelic, the wearing of clan tartans, and the use of certain clan names. It was a rather toothless law because most of the men of fighting age had died in the Battle of Culloden. And that, of course, was the last major battle for Scottish freedom. One of the Scots marches was called Black Bear, and we will approximate the sound of the bagpipes, since obviously we don't have a set with us, by having the cello play the drone and asking Jennifer, our resident Scottish background violinist, give us a pronunciation of your last name with a Scottish twist. It is actually a Scottish name. just so happens she's the one playing this. We'll ask her to give us a very nasal version of this tune. And this tune, Black Bear, is one of the tunes that would have been used to pipe the Clan Cameron into battle. And here in the middle, on the bottom, you see the Brandenburg Gate. That'll come up later. And this bottom left-hand picture, if you recognize it, it's Neuschwanstein Castle, which is what the Disney Castle was based on. I visited once with my high school orchestra. We sold fruit and M&Ms for like 6 years so that we could go on the high school tour. And let me tell you, that's at the top of a mountain, and you can pay to have somebody ride you up there, or you can walk up there, which is what all 140 of us high school students did. And you should be fortified before you go because it's a tall mountain. But anyway, so these are just images of Germany, just to set the scene. But what we're going to look at is 1930s Germany. In the 1930s, jazz music was all the rage on both sides of the Atlantic. As Americans were brought into World War II, the power of music to evoke home, camaraderie, and courage was harnessed by radio and live shows for the troops. Big band music in particular was popular. Famous entertainers played shows for the troops wherever they were stationed. And for the younger folks in the room, I'll just say this is Benny Goodman up here, top left, Gene Krupa, and the one in the middle that probably nobody recognizes, I'll mention in a minute. And this guy down here is Bob Hope. And as a little girl in the 70s, I still remember the televised USO shows that Bob Hope was still doing for the troops. He did those, I think, for at least 40 years. Hitler had an attitude about jazz because he said it was the music of Jews and people of color and was therefore degenerate, not appropriate for consumption by the Aryan race. He first tried to ban it in all areas occupied by the Nazis, but really realizing that was not successful, he had his propaganda minister direct an effort to rewrite lyrics to popular tunes, mocking the Allies and glorifying the Nazis. This effort failed rather miserably. Prisoners of war who received the records would smash them after the first listen. Jazz became the language of resistance on both sides of the battle lines, and one of the signature tunes of the era, Sing Sing Sing, was Sing Sing Sing, and Hitler did not approve. So this record that you see right here, it says Charlie and his orchestra. The guy with the saxophone right there, that's Charlie. There were German musicians who were hired to make these records that would be sent. Remember records? Who remembers the actual physical thing that you had to pick up and put on a machine, right? He was the lead for these recordings that were made. And this is a picture of one of them. And if you'd like to read this, there were rules for how a Nazi jazz musician was supposed to play jazz in a way that would be appropriate for the Aryan race. And this is just a short excerpt of those rules. We will present Sing, Sing, Sing. So this, as I said, these are school presentations. So with each place that we go to, I put a map because I don't want to assume that people know where all these places are in the world. So that's why we have the maps. So who here has heard of the movie Anastasia? Is that still a familiar movie? It's been out for probably 30 years now. It's set in the context of the Russian Revolution of 1917, where the aristocracy was overthrown. In a short 5 years, Joseph Stalin took over and instituted a tight grip on every aspect of Russian life. On top of industrialization, reform of agriculture, and strict control of the military, he wanted to offer a veneer of success, and he wanted to do it through art. Socialist realism is the name of the artistic style that was developed. It had 4 key points. All art was to be relevant to the workers and understandable to them. It should present scenes of everyday life. Its representations should be realistic, and it should be supportive of the aims of the state and the party. Any art that offered a negative view of the party was banned. So here in these pictures, obviously, Father Stalin is looking magnanimously over the lush, wonderful land that he is managing extremely well. And the workers, bottom left, are productive and very happy in their work. The military is focused and understands their job. Upper right is the wives of Moscow who are expressing their thanks to Stalin for his wonderful oversight of everything. And these are athletes, bottom right, who are just so thrilled with how everything is going in his version of Soviet Russia. Dmitry Shostakovich was born in 1906 and grew up amidst the turmoil of early 20th century Russian society. He was a child prodigy at the piano and studied composition with Russian composer Alexander Glazunov. He composed like a crazy man, symphonies, quartets, opera, ballet, 40 movie scores, and concertos for several different instruments. By the time Shostakovich was a young adult, Joseph Stalin was in power, and he took tight control of every industry, including the arts. Anyone who didn't toe the party line was in mortal peril. In the 1930s, Shostakovich's friends kept disappearing. Colleagues and family members were arrested and shot, including his brother-in-law, his mother-in-law, and his uncle. Stalin wanted Russian music to be joyful and optimistic. Shostakovich wasn't feeling it. After his Fourth Symphony was banned, it received its first public performance 25 years later. Shostakovich, in his next symphony, wrote something that sounded like it had the appearance of rejoicing, but it had an underlying message that was too subtle for Stalin to hear. Shostakovich wrote of the last movement, "The rejoicing is forced, created under threat. It's as if someone were beating you with a stick, saying, 'Your business is rejoicing, your business is rejoicing.' And you rise up, shaky, and go marching off, muttering, 'Our business is rejoicing.'" However, it's in D major, and it sounds triumphant, so Stalin liked it. He thought Shostakovich was glorifying him. It wasn't long before Shostakovich was again in trouble. He was denounced and lived in fear that he would be arrested at any moment. He began sleeping in the stairwell of his apartment building so that his wife and young children would not have to witness him being dragged away. In 1960, he was forced to join the Communist Party. It was at this point that he wrote his string quartet number 8 in 3 days. It's uncertain what the motivation behind its writing is. The subtitle is "In Remembrance of the Victims of Fascism and War," though it has been suggested that he wrote it as a requiem for himself. The second movement that we're going to play is filled with frenetic activity and sounds like a war zone. But we'll start with the first movement that is extremely bittersweet and sounds like someone keening over somebody that they've loved and lost. Thank you. Next, we move to China. From 1937, when he came to power, China under Mao Zedong suffered more than one kind of famine. After the failure of the Great Leap Forward and the ensuing starvation, Mao stepped away from power for a time. Returning to power in the mid-1960s, he put his wife, Jiang Qing, in charge of reforming the arts. The Cultural Revolution lasted for 10 years, from 1966 to 1976, ending with the death of Mao. During that time, all Western music was banned, including some Western instruments, such as tuba, trombone, and bassoon. Madame Mao didn't like those sounds. Qing developed 8 model plays, which were different kinds of productions, and they were the only official entertainment that was allowed in China. People from that generation can still sing the tunes, whether they wanted to have learned them or not. And in fact, I was talking to my stand partner today, who is Chinese, and she said her father plays viola because they needed, there were a lot of violin players, but they needed somebody to play viola for one of the orchestras for one of these model plays. And she said it's true, there were only 8 of them, and that's all you were allowed to present at that time in China. It's still difficult for her to talk about because her grandparents were among those who were victims of the Cultural Revolution. So I didn't question her any further, but this is a very real part of fairly recent history. We can't actually play anything from this period because there are no string quartet versions of the 8 model plays. So we will move right along to Afghanistan, which if you had asked me what Afghanistan was like before I started doing research, I would have said it's dry and dusty and they eat crackers. But you can see this is traditional Afghani food right here, which makes my mouth water because it looks so good. And the picture top right, beautiful, verdant, lush. I never would have thought that would be in Afghanistan. And this right here, not surprisingly, bottom left, is called the Blue Mosque because, well, obviously. And interestingly, I thought the 2 flags, the red, green, and black one, was the flag of Afghanistan before the Taliban took back over, and this black and white version that looks rather austere is the current Taliban version of it. And as you can see, lots of color in traditional Afghani dress, lots of joy on these ladies' faces as they are dancing. Afghanistan enjoys a long and colorful history of music and culture, but it was suddenly silenced when the Taliban took power in 1996. When they were ousted in 2001, there was a resurgence of music and art throughout the country. A conservatory of music was established in Kabul under the direction of Ahmad Sarmast. There's a music critic in Indianapolis named Jay Harvey. His son William went to teach there for 4 years, and you can see both of them on the left-hand side. Through William, I know that the school was immediately closed when the Taliban retook power in August of 2021. Under the Taliban's Hanafi interpretation of Sharia law, music is strictly forbidden, even in worship. The students returned their instruments to the school, afraid for them to be found in their homes. Professional musicians who had enjoyed 20 years of performing hid in their homes or tried to leave the country. Instruments were taken from a local recording studio and burned in the street. There are now only officially registered bands. They are allowed to chant certain sections of the Quran, the officially sanctioned musicless music. William has been working through his organization, Cultures in Harmony, to raise money to get musicians out of the country and placed in a safe place where they can continue to study and perform in freedom. And I would recommend, if you're interested in supporting his work, that you look him up on the website, because it's not just Afghani musicians, it's a variety of places around the world where they have initiatives. But this is one that was close to my heart a couple of years ago when I developed this program. Camp Atterbury, south of Indianapolis, was for a while home to thousands of Afghani refugees. During the fall of 2021, musicians from the ISO and many other musicians from the Indianapolis area went to play for them. William quickly arranged some traditional Afghani melodies for string quartet for us to play for them. I asked him to do that because I thought a taste of home in an unfamiliar place can sometimes be better than food. There was an interpreter who, of course, knew these tunes, and he sang along and had the audience smiling and clapping. And some of the people who had been helping said this was the first time that they'd seen these people smiling and the whole time that they had been there. Most touching, the quartet that went to play said, was the little girl who came up when they were finished, and she wanted only to hear Lisa Scott, the only woman in the group, to play by herself. Music is a freedom of expression that's glorious for a man, but nearly impossible for a woman in Afghanistan. The little girl seemed to marvel that a woman could be free to play music here. And the little boy that you see in the picture right there, that's Peter playing the violin, Peter Vickery. He said that little boy stood right there and watched the whole time that they were playing, just marveling at what they were doing. And you'll see a quote up here. Zach Collins is the violist who played. I was supposed to play, but this is 3 years ago when COVID was still raging and I was still in quarantine. So Zach played, and this was his comment. It was really a touching moment for those who were there. So what we would like to play for you now is one of the Afghani tunes that William arranged for that performance. It's called Takena Bashad, which I probably just mispronounced miserably. In the free world, marked by an epic occasion. When the Berlin Wall fell, it was a cataclysmic symbol that shook the world, the end of a stifling of creative force, and it required Beethoven's monumental Ninth Symphony was that response. On Christmas Day in 1989, musicians from East and West Berlin, as well as from around the world, gathered just a few hundred meters from the Brandenburg Gate for this historic performance, which can only be described as euphoric. Broadcast in 20 countries, instead of the word Freude for joy, they used, the choir sang the word Freiheit for freedom, making this the ode to freedom. In a moment, you'll have to imagine the additional 150 or so musicians as we close our program with a string quartet arrangement of Ode to Joy. But this was a particularly poignant program because in the choir were singers from East and West Berlin, and the orchestra of people from major orchestras from around the world, but principally East and West Berlin. That was truly a remarkable occasion for them to be able to come together and make music with each other. And my roommate at the knocked down, those of you who remember, you could see, that's what you see Leonard Bernstein doing right there. And I just, it was amazing. I remember watching this on TV in 1989. Freedom and the artistic expression thereof is bought in any generation at a very dear price. It should be safeguarded by all of us who enjoy it. May we actively value our freedom, and may we be committed to the work of maintaining it for ourselves, for those who were denied it, and for the next generation. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you for your good attention.